This is Shaquille O'Neal, the 7-foot giant who dominated the basketball court. But what if I told you his game off the court might be even more impressive? While most athletes struggle after retirement, Shaq built an empire. From tech startups to fast food chains, this NBA legend turned his fame into hundreds of millions of dollars. How did he do it, and what's the secret to his massive success in business? Let's dive into the untold truth of Shaquille O'Neal, the world's biggest businessman. Shaquille O'Neal was born on March 6, 1972 in Newark, New Jersey. His father, Toney, was a standout 6'1" high school basketball player who had the chance to get a better life after getting offered a scholarship to play at Seton Hall. However, he struggled with drug addiction, eventually getting in prison when his son was still an infant. Upon his release, Toney wasn't a part of O'Neal's life. Instead, he allowed his son to be raised by a single mother, the 6'2" Lucille O'Neal. Luckily for Lucille, she met a man who was willing to treat her son as his own. Philip Arthur Harrison, an Army sergeant, took Shaq as his stepfather. The young O'Neal grew up knowing Phil as his father when his biological dad was never part of the picture. Growing up with a sergeant as his father figure was the best thing that ever happened to him because Shaq grew up disciplined away from the streets, even though his family didn't have a lot of money. Sarge, as Shaq would call him, was a hard disciplinarian on his stepson. Not because he didn't like the boy, but because he knew that he needed to be strict with him. After all, Shaq's biological father wasted his chances at success, and Sarge wanted the apple to fall far from the tree. Shaq had a lot of strict household rules to obey, and whenever he slipped up, Sarge made sure to discipline him accordingly.
Prior to that, my father said, if you get suspended again, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna beat you like you never been beat before because you're irresponsible, you're a medium-level juvenile delinquent, and moving at this pace, you're going to be nothing in life. I'm not having that in my house.
As everywhere in the world, there are two sides to everything. While his size is a big reason for his legendary basketball career, it was also the reason he was bullied and insecure, and the reason why he struggled to make friends. His insecurity haunted him, leading him to become a bully himself as a way to protect his heart. At 6'6", when he was just 13 years old, it wasn't hard for the young O'Neal to stand out as a basketball player. But simultaneously, it wasn't hard to stand out as a human being, too.
How would people tease you?
Shaquille, Sasquatch, big African. So I stuttered when I talk, big dummy, and I was always shy. You know, I would look at you, and I would look at your test scores, and you look like a smart ass. You'd probably have an 80. You'd probably have a 90 or an 80. I was intimidated by that. I was like, I'm not that smart. I can't do it. I was very, very shy. And always had self-doubts about myself and just never thought I could do it, anything.
Then one incident changed everything.
You're suspended for 3 days.
Suspended for 3 days. So now I got to go home. I already know what I'm getting when I get home. But before I go home, I'm going to whoop your ass. So I'm beating this kid up, and I'm kicking this kid, and he has a epileptic seizure. It's just me and the kid out there, and he's on the ground shaking. And now I'm frightened because, uh-oh. So then a guy comes, and he saves the kid. And, but after that, I go home, I get disciplined, my mother pulls me to the side and says, you're too big and too strong, you can't ever do that again. And that kind of stayed with me. I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. So then I was like, I'm not going to beat people up. Let me go to plan B on how to get them to like me. Because I was always a class clown, funny guy. So now let me just, do this a lot to get people to like me. And I just stuck with that rather than being a bully.
Until this day, we can see and watch the funny Shaquille O'Neal. As soon as the family settled down in San Antonio, Texas, O'Neal started dominating the hoop scene. At 6'10", the large teenager led his team to a one-loss record over the past 2 seasons before winning the state championship during his senior year. By the end of his high school years, he was the most talked-about prospect in the country because there weren't a lot of young men his size ready to dominate the sport at any level. Shaq ultimately chose to go to LSU because he thought the campus felt like home to him. He also already had a good relationship with the team's head coach, Dale Brown, after getting to know him in Europe a few years back. He spent 3 seasons at LSU, becoming the most dominant big man in the collegiate ranks. Shaq was a walking double-double, a great shot blocker and an unstoppable finisher inside the paint. After all, he was already 7'1" and close to 300 pounds in college. He was a two-time All-American and SEC Player of the Year, even though he didn't win a national championship in college. While he left LSU as a junior to pursue a career in the NBA, he continued his education while playing professionally because his mother always reminded him the value of education. Lucille didn't get a chance to go to college while she was raising her son, but she valued education as much as any smart person did, especially when it came to her son's future. After all, basketball players only have a limited window to make money, but if you're educated, you can use your education to make money your entire life. Shaq knew that and eventually graduated with a business degree at LSU. And he never stopped learning and studying, even while making millions in the NBA. But how much did Shaq's education really help him with his rise as a millionaire? Of course, Shaq's road to becoming a multimillionaire had to start somewhere because it wasn't as if his family was making millions. So after getting drafted first overall in 1992, he was set for a stellar NBA career with the Orlando Magic. He was the most dominant rookie in years because the young man was bullying grown NBA players inside the paint and dunking on everyone.
2 feet Shaq, dribbles, nothing home, and there is continuation on that.
O'Neal was a beast of a man, using his mammoth size and athleticism to their full potential during these younger years. Despite standing over 7 foot tall and weighing close to 300 pounds as a younger player, Shaq could run the floor like a guard and then finish strong against any defense near the basket. He became an instant celebrity because of his highlight reel plays, and it also helped that he was big and strong enough to actually destroy the rim when he dunked the ball hard. But the best part about O'Neal's status as a star was his personality. He carried himself like a child who was simply living his dream of playing the game he loved. Like we know now, Shaq loved joking around on and off the camera, and he had this type of personality that gravitated people over to his side. Of course, companies saw this as a golden ticket. Despite playing in a smaller market in Orlando, Shaq had plenty of endorsements because he was one of the biggest basketball stars on the planet. He appeared in commercials, billboards, and even video games. Some of his most notable endorsement deals involved Reebok, Pepsi, and Burger King. And the money he was making from those deals was on top of the 4-year, $17 million contract he signed with the Magic when he was a rookie. As his NBA career blossomed, his star power only grew to exponential heights. He may not have been as good or as successful as Michael Jordan during the 90s, but O'Neal was right up there in terms of some of the most popular players in that era. After all, he had a larger-than-life stature and a personality that made him look like a true gentle giant. He was dominating the floor as a member of the Orlando Magic, reaching the 1995 NBA Finals while putting up all-time great numbers as a true superstar. However, it didn't take long for Shaq's star power to ultimately grow bigger than what Orlando could offer. Of course, he had a few disagreements with fellow superstar Penny Hardaway, who thought that he was the Magic's best player. There were rumors that Penny thought he was the team's true leader and that Shaq didn't deserve more money than he did. It all led to the inevitable decision of O'Neal to leave the Orlando Magic as a free agent in 1996. When it became clear that Shaq wasn't going to re-sign with the Magic, everyone knew that O'Neal was eyeing the LA Lakers because of the money he could make in Los Angeles. So, did Shaq really go after the money instead of forging a legacy in Orlando? The Lakers may have been a rebuilding team, but this was the only franchise that had the money and business opportunities to afford a star of Shaq's caliber. He wasn't just a superstar, but a true megastar who could attract box office numbers with his popularity. There was no city bigger than LA for someone of Shaq's status. Ultimately, the lights of Los Angeles were far too bright for O'Neal to ignore as he moved on from the smaller city of Orlando to become the Lakers' new franchise star. Of course, going to the Lakers also meant he was teaming up with a young star named Kobe Bryant, whose potential was through the roof. But the decision to go to LA was as much about money and business as it was about basketball. O'Neal was getting criticized by the media, saying it was all about the money for him. In true Shaq fashion, he answered those criticisms by also plugging in a few of his endorsements, saying, "I'm tired of hearing about money, 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 money. I just want to play the game, drink Pepsi, wear Reebok." Of course, it also helped that the Lakers offered Shaq a huge 7-year deal worth $121 million, the largest contract in the history of professional sports at that time. That contract may pale in comparison to the figures that today's superstars are making. But that was a huge deal at the time, as athletes weren't always getting $100 million contract offers during the 90s. And it was all thanks to how Shaq maneuvered himself into a position to negotiate and demand a hefty sum that no other superstar in the league could command at that time. After all, when you need 2 or 3 players to gang up on you inside the paint to stop you from scoring, you can ask a team to pay you the heftiest sum possible. Shaq's early years with the Lakers, however, weren't entirely glamorous because his team wasn't in the position to compete for a championship. But he made the most of his time there. He was starring in movies, appearing in television shows, and making money off of TV deals. That wasn't something he could do if he had stayed in Orlando. A guy of his caliber was too much of a big fish in a small pond, especially when he was popular enough to star in a superhero film. But he was worth every penny he was making because the Lakers were selling out tickets, getting more endorsement deals, and getting more media attention than ever before. Meanwhile, as the Lakers' young pieces developed while the team continued adding more role players and a new head coach, basketball success eventually followed O'Neal. Phil Jackson's coaching and Kobe Bryant's emerging star talent allowed O'Neal to play at his best during the 1990 to 2000 season. He was by far the league's best player at that time, and his size and athleticism were far too much for any other player to handle. O'Neal was named the league's MVP for the first and only time in his career in 2000, all while averaging 29.7 points, 13.6 rebounds, and 3 blocks. He and the Lakers had a tough road to the 2000 NBA Finals, especially after running through the gritty Portland Trail Blazers in the Western Conference Finals. But the iconic alley-oop pass from Kobe to Shaq capped off that run to the finals, where the Lakers ultimately defeated the Indiana Pacers to win the NBA championship. Shaq was now a true winner in the NBA, and that championship made the Lakers realize that the big man was worth the huge investment in 1996. At that point in his life, Shaq's star power only continued booming, especially because there wasn't any other star bigger and more powerful than the Big Diesel. In hindsight, Shaq made the right decision to move to LA to chase after fame and fortune. There wasn't even any assurance he would have won a title in Orlando. But in Los Angeles, he got the best of both worlds, earning his first NBA title and making more money than he ever would have made if he stayed in Orlando. Life seemed perfect. Too perfect. The Lakers, under the leadership of Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant, were good, far too good to be precise. There was no team in the NBA that could legitimately beat the Lakers in a 7-game series. So despite going through a few rough stretches from 2000 to 2002, Shaq and Kobe led the Lakers to 3 straight championships, forming the NBA's newest dynasty and cementing their legacy as one of, if not the greatest duo in league history. But things between the two megastars weren't going too well. Shaq was partying and celebrating a bit too much during the off-seasons. He often neglected to work on his game and conditioning during the summer, eventually reporting to training camp fat and overweight. While he was listed at 325 pounds during the early 2000s, Shaq admitted that he was close to 400 pounds during his heaviest. O'Neal's weight problems and perceived lack of work ethic did not sit well with Bryant, who was always known as an obsessively hard worker. Kobe wasn't happy that the team's best player and leader was more interested in having fun and getting fat in the offseason instead of working hard. There was also an alpha male struggle between the two stars in LA, with Kobe believing that he needed to get featured more on the offense if Shaq wasn't willing to step up and work on his conditioning. The worst part came in 2002 when Shaq missed the first 12 games of the 2002-2003 regular season while recovering from toe surgery. He reportedly delayed surgery and waited until training camp because, according to him, "I got hurt on company time, so I'll heal on company time." Essentially, he didn't want to spend the whole offseason lounging and resting at home to recover from surgery. Shaq's injury problems and the growing animosity between him and Bryant led to the end of the Lakers' 3-year run as champions. Despite failing to win 4 straight titles, O'Neal secured another huge deal with the Lakers, signing a 3-year contract worth $88.5 million. On top of that, the Lakers also formed a super team by making moves to acquire old superstars Karl Malone and Gary Payton. The Lakers were the favorites to win it all that season, only for them to lose to the Pistons in the 2004 NBA Finals. And the blaming game started, with the Lakers' assistant coach Tex Winter claiming that Shaq was a bit too passive in that series. But O'Neal thought that the Lakers were simply criticizing him because they wanted to keep Kobe happy. After all, Bryant was set to be the team's future because he was still young and yet to enter his prime. Meanwhile, Shaq was the older star set to see a decline. Unable to mend the relationship he had with Kobe in the Laker front office, O'Neal demanded a trade, ending the best years of his basketball career unceremoniously. Ultimately, those years he spent feuding with Kobe were also lessons to Shaq. It wasn't just a basketball thing to him, but was something more. He learned that the NBA is, first and foremost, a business, and that its teams will always be more focused on what makes the most sense from a business standpoint. The truth of the matter was that Kobe was the shiny new product the Lakers wanted to promote in place of Shaq, the old product that was set to exit the market soon. He saw this firsthand when the Lakers were much more willing to make Bryant happy at the expense of the older star who helped put the team back on the map. And as a businessman himself, Shaq needed to look after his interests as well, eventually forging a new path in Miami. But was leaving the Lakers really the right decision for him, especially with his age catching up to his body? Shaq's best years may have already been behind him when he moved to Miami to team up with the young Dwayne Wade. But he was still the most unstoppable big man in the league. Shaq won his 4th championship in 2006 when he led the Miami Heat to a win over the Dallas Mavericks. But that was the last hurrah for the big man, as he quickly declined due to age and injuries after that run with the Heat. Miami was struggling with team success and Shaq's injuries. In 2005, they signed O'Neal to an extension worth $101 million until 2010. But in 2008, he was far too expensive for the team to keep, especially when he was no longer worth the hefty price tag. At 35, he was averaging around 14 points, far from the numbers he had a few years ago in LA. So the Heat traded him to the Phoenix Suns. Shaq saw a slight resurgence in his career after that move to Phoenix, appearing in the 2009 All-Star Game, the last of his career. But at 36 years old, he needed to build for the future because he knew that he wasn't going to command $100 million once again once his contract was up in 2010. So that's when he steadily and slowly shifted from being a big man on the court to being a big man in the business world. Shaq wasn't a stranger to business. He was already making investments, starting up businesses, and meeting with entrepreneurs even during his prime years. But the one thing that bothered him the most was that the businessmen he met acted like he didn't know a thing about business. He once said, "I noticed that every time I go to a business meeting, the guys we're doing deals with will be like, 'Hello, Shaq, how are you doing?' And then they would turn away and look at my lawyers, accountants, and all those guys. So I said, 'Oh, you guys don't think I'm in charge? You guys don't think I understand the lingo?' This experience led him to pursue a master's degree from the University of Phoenix while he was playing with the Suns. He even paid the tuition fees of 15 friends to attend classes with him because a single class needed a minimum of 15 students. Shaq's pursuit of a higher level of education ultimately helped him prepare for life after the NBA. After graduating from the University of Phoenix, he continued with a doctoral degree in education from Barry University. And he achieved that feat while journeying from one team to another, playing for the Cleveland Cavaliers and eventually the Boston Celtics. O'Neal's NBA career ended in 2011 as the most dominant player in league history retired at 39 years old. While he could have retired 3 years earlier, he once said that the only reason why he continued playing was because his stepfather taught him never to quit something he started. And so he only decided to retire when he realized that his aging and battered body couldn't handle the grind of an NBA season. At that point, he had already planted the groundwork of what eventually became a business empire. Shaq never stayed far from the game. As soon as he retired, he joined TNT's Inside the NBA, completing the dream team composed of himself, Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, and Ernie Johnson. During his time as a TV analyst with TNT, Shaq made a name for himself as the biggest clown on television. He brought with him the same comedic flair and energy that made him one of the jolliest people to be with during his NBA career. He turned Inside the NBA into a must-see show because of his jokes, antics, and constant banners with Barkley. But while people were starting to see him as one of TV's funniest personalities, he was steadily building a financial legacy behind the scenes. So, what did Shaq do to ensure he didn't squander off his wealth? Almost everyone in the world knows who Shaq is. It's not only because he's 7 feet tall and built one of the greatest careers in the history of the NBA as the most dominant big man the league's ever seen. It's also because he positioned himself to become recognizable to just about anyone who sees him. All those movies, commercials, and endorsements were not only Shaq's way of making some extra cash on the side. The jokes and antics on television may look like O'Neal's way of having fun and making people happy, but they ultimately contributed to the brand he created for himself. When people see him, they instantly recognize him for different reasons. Old school fans know him as the giant who dunked on 3 people. Younger people, meanwhile, see him as that old uncle who loves joking around on TV. When you're a recognizable guy, you can put yourself in a good position to promote products and market other brands, all while building your own brand. He also made sure to promote and endorse items that fit his image, even after retiring. So when he wasn't promoting sports-related products, he was building his brand by endorsing suit companies like JCPenney and Macy's. If he wanted people to get to know his partying side, he promoted speaker companies and beverages. Of course, he also had different collaborations with recognizable brands and personalities to become even more recognizable. These included rappers, brand influencers, and other athletes. The big man basically kept himself in the spotlight to ensure that he stayed relevant, even in the evolving landscape where social media rules the marketing world. But building an empire takes more than just proper branding. So, what else did he do to create a multi-million-dollar empire? He attributes his $15 million deal with Reebok to the fundamentals of business he learned when he was younger. But it wasn't until his first meeting with Lakers legend Magic Johnson during the early 90s that he eventually decided to steadily build his business empire. Magic told him, "It's okay to be famous, but at some point you need to own things." Truer words were never spoken. As popular as Shaq was during his prime years, his window for making millions as a basketball megastar was limited. He was still making money with his contract with TNT after retiring, but that wasn't close to what he was making as a player. A staggering 60% of NBA players go broke after retiring. We've seen this story a lot of times. One of the biggest examples is Allen Iverson, who used to be one of the most influential figures in the NBA, but eventually went broke after his playing years. It's also incredibly difficult for athletes to not go broke after retirement. That's because a lot of athletes tend to overspend while they're still playing, believing that they can always make another $10 million next year. There's also the fact that these athletes don't surround themselves with the best people who know a thing or two about financial responsibility. Instead, they surround themselves with yes guys who would rather leech out their success instead of telling them to spend their money wisely. So, no matter how much money a player earns during his playing career, those hundreds of millions can go down to zero if they don't spend their money wisely or act as if they could never run out of money. After all, an athlete only has a limited window to make money with his skills. But when they start declining in their 30s, they're not going to be making as much money as they were during their mid-20s. That's why it's common for pro athletes who earn millions during their lifetime to one day file bankruptcy. In this case, Shaq needed to be smart with his approach. Earning more than $300 million during his NBA career, O'Neal had the capital to make business deals and invest in people and businesses. Of course, during his playing years, he surrounded himself with people who acted in his best interests and ensured to strike deals that were beneficial to everyone. In his own words, O'Neal said that he always loved surrounding himself with people smarter than him because he loved not being the smartest person in the room. And by knowing that you're not the smartest person in the room, you can learn a lot from the people around you. He delegated tasks to experts in their field while allowing trusted people to run day-to-day operations in his place. But the ultimate yes and no decisions always boiled down to the big man himself. That means that he not only needed to be smart enough, but also experienced enough to make the right decisions. And his failures early in life served as his life lessons. He said, from like 19 to 26, anybody could come to my office, tell me that deal, and I would take it right away. No research, no due diligence. If I get your million now, boom, 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 in a couple years, it'll be a couple million. I'll do that deal. That explains why Shaq's face was all over television, magazines, and billboards early in his career. He couldn't say no to proposals he thought were going to pay off in the long term. Eventually, he realized that not every deal that sounds good on paper is a deal worth taking, spending millions on high-risk, high-reward businesses. Ultimately, though, he learned that he needed to build a legacy as a businessman, not by putting his eggs into one basket, but by starting small. But he also made a lot of other mistakes. When he was younger, he once spent $1 million by mistake in a single day. This included purchases of a luxury vehicle and other equally expensive items. But what he didn't know was that his expenses had already totaled $1 million, not because he overspent, but because he didn't account for taxes. It was only when the bank manager called him about the situation that he learned that he had accidentally splurged around $200,000 on taxes alone. This wasn't the only time he got a call from the bank. When he got traded to Phoenix from Miami, he had to move in a hurry. So that means he didn't have enough time to carry his stuff from Miami to Phoenix. So he ended up splurging at Walmart, buying furniture and basic stuff, only for his credit card to get declined. It was a funny story though, because the bank thought someone had stolen his credit card and decided to use it to splurge over $70,000 at Walmart.
I gotta go get appliances, sheets, towels, underwear, t-shirts. So at the end it was $70,000, so I put my credit card in and got declined. So then the American Express security called me. Hey man, somebody stole your credit card and they spent $70,000 at Walmart. I said, no, that was me. What the hell are you buying for $70,000?
Nevertheless, these were small mistakes that, when they started piling up, could eventually hurt anyone's financial situation, including someone like Shaq, who was earning millions at that time. One of the most remarkable things about Shaq, of course, is that the lessons he learned as a basketball player and businessman are reflected on his children. You're probably aware that his children tried to follow his footsteps as a basketball player. But the important part is that he never pressured them into excelling in the sport. Instead, he wants them to follow their own paths in life and be successful in them, whether as a lawyer, a businessman, or an athlete. He's also made sure never to spoil them, saying in an interview with Logan Paul that his kids need to be successful academics before they could touch his money. He believes in something called respectable nepotism, which is giving your children opportunities in life, but making them work for it.
Because I believe in respectable nepotism. I tell them all the time, we don't need another basketball player. There's 6 of y'all. Somebody give me law school, somebody give me hedge fund, be yourself. And I tell them, in order to touch daddy's cheese, you gotta have 3 degrees.
That means that even though he's already set for life with his money, he doesn't want his kids to be complacent. Basically telling them that they also have to work as hard as he did if they want to get a share of his fortune. As he famously told his kids, "We're not rich, I'm rich." The mistakes he made in life, of course, are things that he also wants his kids to make so they could learn from them, similar to how he learned from his mistakes. And this is a lesson he learned from how his father abandoned him and how his mother and how Sarge raised him under a strict and disciplined roof. You know that he never had a good relationship with his biological father, but the mistake his dad made was fuel for Shaq to ensure that he doesn't make the same mistakes with his kids. He's always been a big part of his children's lives, loving and supporting them all equally. At the same time, he knows how to be hard and strict on them in his own way, based on what he learned from his stepdad. He doesn't want his kids to be undisciplined. But how much did his mistakes and desire to learn from them affect his rise as the biggest businessman in the world? Shaq was always a man with a lot of hobbies and interests. That's the reason why he didn't work as hard as Kobe did during the offseason, because he wanted to pursue different hobbies and opportunities. He never liked being one-dimensional, and he applied the same mentality to his approach to business. Instead of investing in large businesses that could have given him huge returns for equal capital injections, O'Neal diversified his portfolio by focusing on smaller businesses. He's often called the franchise king for a good reason. At one point, he owned 155 franchises of Five Guys, basically comprising 10% of the company's total franchise profile. He also has other smaller franchises, including 17 Auntie Anne's stores and a Krispy Kreme franchise in Atlanta. Shaq also has a big chicken restaurant in Las Vegas and a Los Angeles burger place that bears his name. He also joined the board of directors of Papa John's, promising to open a lot of Papa John's franchises. Shaq's also the pizza chain's brand ambassador after inking a 3-year deal worth $8.25 million. But while you might think it's all about food for Shaq, you'd be shocked to know that he's diversified in other businesses as well. The food industry may be his bread and butter, but he also owns 40 24-hour fitness franchises and 150 car washes. O'Neal has also become a venture capitalist himself. He owns stock with Google and was a minority owner of the Sacramento Kings until 2022. Of course, it's easy to see him as a guy who simply throws his money into different businesses. But that's not true, because he once admitted that after the mistakes he made when he was young, Shaq only invests in businesses he personally likes. In fact, in 2016, he loved Ring, a doorbell camera home security system, so much that he personally offered to invest in the company. And when Amazon bought it for $1 billion, it's safe to say that O'Neal got his money's worth. Overall, as Shaq admitted, he's making more than $30 million annually from his different income streams. That's more than the money he was earning at his peak when he was in the NBA. In most cases, former NBA players don't even make half of what they were making from their biggest contracts. In Shaq's case, however, he's now wealthier than he was when he was at his peak playing years. Needless to say, Shaq did the right things and made the right decisions. From over $300 million earned during his playing years, he ballooned his overall net worth to more than $500 million. So, from growing up in a middle-class family, Shaq's set for life. It's all because he never wanted to be the smartest guy in the room and had the right people to teach him how to make the best decisions in life. Whether it was his stepfather teaching him the value of discipline and hard work, to his business partners telling him where to invest his money, O'Neal made the best possible moves to literally become the world's biggest businessman.